He was the voice of peace, a symbol of humility, and a spiritual guide for billions. Pope Francis taped a message the Vatican wished to keep private in his closing days. It has now been revealed. What he stated at 88 days before his death startled Christians and left the world with more questions than answers. Do you think powerful institutions like the Vatican should be transparent? Find out what Pope Francis revealed in his closing moments and why some claim the Church doesn't want that message circulated. Pope Francis's faith change journey. Born on the 17th, Mario Bergoglio was a boy before becoming a spiritual leader. Unter Ici was born in Buenos Aires to Italian immigrants in December 1906. Bergoglio's road to the Vatican was unusual since he was modest, diligent, and spiritual from childhood. He studied science, danced tango, and dated briefly. But in his early 20s, he was drawn to the priesthood. He joined the Jesuits and pledged poverty, obedience, and service. Jesuit Bergoglio was more than a scholar, man of the people. As Archbishop of Buenos Aires in 1998, he declined to reside in the bishop's palace and instead lived in a modest apartment where he cooked and took public transportation. He puzzled powerful people, a silent savior for the impoverished. Bergoglio walked barefoot through the slums while others hid in churches. Then, 13th March 2013 brought actual and metaphorical lightning. The Sistine Chapel's white smoke appeared hours after lightning struck St. Peter's Dam's dome. International cardinals had just elected the first Jesuit pope, the first American pope, and the first non-European pope in almost 1,200 years. Jorge Mario Bergoglio made a statement when he stepped onto the balcony and took the name Francis, after the saint who promoted peace and the poor. The church was transforming, but it was hard. Pope Francis took office during a crisis. Sexual abuse scandals, falling attendance, and modern skepticism have plagued the Catholic Church for decades. Francis questioned tradition while his predecessors protected it. He rejected papal pageantry, the sumptuous papal palace, and famously declared, "Who am I to judge?" These words should resound in all conversations of homosexuality, inclusiveness, and reform. He invited climate scientists to the Vatican, opened Pope Pius XII and Holocaust archives, and supported interfaith engagement with Muslims and Jews. His climate change and economic inequality encyclicals are lauded and criticized. He opposed capitalism, supported a poor church for the poor, and cautioned of global indifference. But not everyone liked his idea. Simmering Vatican tensions, traditionalist cardinals publicly opposed him. Conspiracy ideas spread. Was Francis too extreme? Too fast? Some feared split. He was criticized for softening church stances, welcoming LGBTQ+ people, and addressing Vatican bank financial corruption. He sacked authorities and investigated secretly. He succeeded strong Cardinal Angelo Becciu in 2020 after a strange London real estate financial crisis. The Vatican developed behind the scenes, which not everyone appreciated. Pope Francis persisted. He traveled constantly. He prayed at Ground Zero in New York, visited the Central African Republic during the civil conflict, and wandered Mosul's ruins just weeks after ISIS's defeat. On Maundy Thursday, he bathed prisoners' and immigrants' feet, conducted remote climate marches, and promoted social and scientific collaboration during the pandemic. He was the people's pope, listening. He broke convention and projected compassion everywhere. The first cracks appeared over time. Pope Francis frequently used a wheelchair in 2022. Despite official reports of a knee problem, there were whispers of more serious issues, such as repeated lung troubles from a childhood surgery or a brain issue. He canceled travels, appeared frailer, and spoke more about his resignation, like Pope Benedict XVI, who resigned in 2013. Francis persisted, insisted on serving till the finish. Several people noted tiny changes in his final months. He often discussed death, responsibility, and secrets. He mentioned church threats in private talks. Dark powers fought reform. Warning of wolves in sheep's clothes, he said cryptic things like, "The house of God must be cleansed despite shaky foundations." No headlines accompanied these statements. They were visible to anyone who paid attention. Pope Francis's life and death. Pope Francis faced more than old age and disease. His opponent was significantly larger. Maybe a mental war. Possibly political. Spring 2025 saw the Vatican tighten around the Pope. Public appearances shortened. He seemed robotic in his last Sunday blessing. He struggled to construct sentences on camera. He saw frightened helpers behind him. Rumors spread about the Pope's illness. There was no official word. Be silent. The world mourns a leader and a man who carried history, scandal, change, and faith with his premature death. A man many feel knew more. When he knew, was his dying peaceful? Or did it end a lengthy, secret battle for his health and the Church's soul? History of Pope Francis. A revolutionary. A modest man. A pope whose legacy and final days are difficult. Pope Francis is generally hailed as the most accessible and active pope in decades, making his steady health decline difficult to overlook. He had been praised for his ability to serve the poor, navigate Manila's tight slum staircases, and navigate refugee camps. In the early 2000s and 20s, the fun-loving man who seemed to defy his age began to exhibit symptoms of wear and tear. The Vatican initially diagnosed a minor sickness, a minor limp and canceled event. They assured me not to worry. However, careful observers detected a change. Francis could no longer walk alone in 2022. He started using a cane in public. Next came the wheelchair. Still, he smiled. He blessed huge audiences. His talks were full with missionary zeal. His illness may have appeared less serious to the Vatican. Pope Francis had colon surgery in July 2021. Vatican sources denied he had fully recovered, despite officials' claims. The operation was damaging. Complications reportedly lingered longer than predicted. Francis' childhood respiratory issues caused by a serious lung infection seemed to be returning. Only one lung worked, and it was weakening. He continued to travel, visiting Bahrain, Canada, Kazakhstan, and war-torn Iraq. His timetable was hectic. It was like he knew his time was limited. He wanted to communicate with the world while he could. However, watchers noticed his toll with each journey. He sometimes slurred, took lengthier breaks, or had problems standing during Mass. Beginning 2024, worries rose. Francis hastily postponed his travel to Dubai for a climate summit due to illness. The Vatican statement was unclear. Some accounts said the condition was respiratory failure, requiring immediate treatment. The following month saw more events pulled from his calendar. Certain Wednesday audiences were dropped. Not even Easter Mass shrank. However, the Vatican has not disclosed anything. His deteriorating condition was not explained, but rest and regular exams were stressed. Uncertainty presents questions in a church that maintains tradition and order. Additionally, some Vatican residents whispered behind its high walls. The situation was wrong. The weird week followed. The Pope unexpectedly canceled 5 events starting April 14, 2025. Neither reason was given. No video message was uploaded. Vatican authorities stood firm despite press harassment. On 17th, Pope Francis was momentarily carried along an apostolic palace corridor on April 1. He walked with a lowered head and hushed lips. Some assumed he was praying, others saw him as disoriented. The next day, April 18, he last appeared. He prayed briefly in a dimly lit area in an unexpected Vatican video. But there was an issue, a peculiar lighting effect. He looked pallid. His usually clear and warm voice sounded gruff and uncaring when he talked. Reporters and crowd were absent. The image of Alice was static. The mood was solemn. Official channels stopped airing the program after one broadcast. Absolute quiet followed. Pope Francis's death and Vatican secrecy. Public sightings and declarations have stopped after April 19. No news or confirmation of his survival. Vatican press office released a one-sentence statement at April 20. Holy Father pauses. However, the Vatican has boosted security behind the scenes. Swiss security guarded papal apartments. Unmarked medical vans crossed the Vatican's back gates in both directions. A foreign medical team was flown in with diplomatic approval. This source requested anonymity. Cardinal Kevin Farrell announced it at 7:35 ante-meridiem on April 21, 2025, Vatican time. He announced, His Holiness Pope Francis died peacefully in his home. We offer our heartfelt condolences. His silent statement surprised the Catholic world by not revealing the cause of death, timing, or witnesses. Peace and quiet? A lot of people have wondered. Several anomalies were noticed quickly. What prevented an official death time? Why has the Vatican not provided information for 3 days? Why were Vatican staff asked to turn in their phones hours after his death? The phenomenon sparked speculation among journalists and fans. Is this a medical emergency? Was he found unresponsive after being ignored, or did he die in his sleep? False rumors circulated. Some said they collapsed during a private mass. An unsubstantiated claim suggested he was given oxygen in an emergency, but it arrived too late. Later theories were more dramatic. Was his voice gone? Had he discovered hidden facts, threats, or corruption that made his life unpleasant? It may sound unlikely, but papal deaths are virtually always controversial. Many argue the circumstances in which John Paul de Mays died 33 days after his election. Even when Francis is gone and the Vatican stays mute, secrecy continues. We know that. Pope Francis was weaker. He isolated admitters. As the world noticed and possibly held weight, he could not talk in his closing days. He was more alone and thoughtless. Whatever transpired in the last 3 days in rites, one thing is certain. Pope Francis' death does not end a papacy, the first step to solving a riddle. The Vatican sent a serious message that will be heard worldwide. His Holiness, Pope Francis died peacefully in his residence. We offer our heartfelt condolences. The explanation was brief, reserved, and almost too calm. For explanation, the list did not specify a reason of death. No physician was cited. The death time was unknown. The announcement seemed pointless for a billion-plus people's favorite man. After making the official statement, Cardinal Kevin Farrell stayed silent. However, the globe fell into despair and bewilderment within minutes. Global media hurried to report the breaking news. Flags were lowered in all Catholic buildings. Cathedral bells rung worldwide. People gathered from Buenos Aires to Boston. Others prayed, while others sat dumbfounded. Memorials, tributes, and inquiries flooded social media as the news broke. After the news, private conversations became deeper and stranger. What caused this contrived feeling? Why had there been so little transparency? Events must be examined chronologically. Since the 18th century, Pope Francis outsiders stopped seeing April 3 days before the announcement, according to anonymous Vatican sources. No video addresses, images, or public blessings occurred during this time. This utter opacity has upset the digital era, where transparency is anticipated. Some Vatican Rome correspondents reported on April 19th. Access to the Apostolic Palace was immediately blocked. Swiss security guards, who usually ignored journalists, became harsh and refused to answer questions. Access logs for some sections were permanently destroyed. Even Vatican press corps members complained about being unusually restricted from attending daily briefings. Communication delays and the Vatican's concealment fostered distrust. World leaders spoke at noon. In confusion, Vice President appointed Joe Biden, the second Catholic president in U.S. history. Pope Francis as a moral beacon. Macron called it a bridge between civilizations. Argentine President Javier Milei conducted a vigil at the Metropolitan Cathedral of Buenos Aires, crying, saying he was our guy, a man of Argentina, the world, and God. After receiving many condolences, the Vatican did not respond. Vatican response to Pope Francis's death. More occurrences have disclosed the enigma. Both the Vatican's YouTube channel and archive website have erased all recent Pope Francis videos. The last blessing video, released 18th. The April publication vanished. Vatican Radio abruptly halted hourly broadcasts. After daily prayers and contemplation, the Pope's Twitter account had no goodbye post. Also, the account went silent. The Pope's online presence vanished, as if someone wished to conceal his final days. The 22nd internet rumors began in April. The Vatican waited to reply to claims that the Pope had died several days earlier. The Holy Father may have fainted following a secret meeting with key officials after receiving distressing information. An unsubstantiated report claims he died in the papal chapel, where he was confined alone and discovered when he didn't answer the door. An anonymous former Vatican archivist informed Italian media that the Pope had ordered a confidential report on internal corruption, which was suddenly lost in the days before his death. This contradicts the Vatican archivist's assertion. No official confirmation is possible. There was no Vatican participation. The speakers declared that the Holy Father had returned to God. Our job is to pray for his soul. It satisfied many Christians. St. Peter's Square was full of people holding Pope Francis photographs and candles. Flowers adorned the gates. Pilgrims knelt, sang hymns, and held rosaries for prayer. Confession queues were blocks long. Pope was remembered. Who had sympathy for societal outcasts, celebrated Mass in prisons, refused to judge, and violated all the norms to reach the unreachable. However, some, notably church politicians, found the whole episode very unsettling, too organized, quiet, and timely for her preference. A senior European diplomat, speaking anonymously, said the Vatican's conclusion that a person died peacefully may mean anything. They utilized this language when things weren't as claimed. Many people recall Pope John Paul XII's 1978 death in bed after 33 days in office, with no autopsy, no explanation, and many unsolved ideas. The Catholic Church lost another reformist pope in 2025, but his death was ambiguous. It seems this mysterious legacy lasted. Having to prepare swiftly for the conclave increased strain. The College of Cardinals began planning travel hours after Pope Francis' death. The invites were mailed and logistics were being made. However, the funeral date was unknown. Nobody knew his reason of death or his last hours. Church wheels turned. However, believers and their souls were in darkness. Pope Francis mourners may feel this most. Although he is gone, his death feels like a page from a book we never finished. The chapter was closed, so we couldn't read the closing sentences. Shadows exist in a church that preaches light. One question haunts the Holy City even within the Vatican. Why did Pope Francis die? What are you concealing? A different story emerged behind the scenes as the world mourned Pope Francis. He rejected the Vatican's carefully prepared account of events. The official statement indicated he died quietly in his house, although there was no medical certificate, autopsy, or eyewitness report. Questions arose as a written obituary was read in silence. The Vatican's centuries-old rituals and secrecy have always sparked mistrust. Even by his own opaque conditions, Pope Francis's death appeared unusually scripted. I thought the timing was too excellent. Pope Francis' death and Vatican rumors. Several shows were canceled. The Apostolic Palace locked abruptly. Press interviews and web presence were absent. After that, he vanished instantly. Some mentioned sacred timing. Other names were mentioned. After the announcement, Italian press reported that Pope Francis had a critical dossier. The dossier contained extensive charges of financial malfeasance, power abuse, and secret political maneuvers in church top offices. They whispered that the Pope was about to declassify the information and share it with a global interfaith consortium through avenues the Vatican doesn't normally employ. It's unknown where the dossier is. In the week before his death, Vatican officials noticed a worrying pattern. In a surprise move, the Pope requested private, unplanned discussions with 3 cardinals who had criticized his reform agenda. One reportedly declined the meeting. Another participant said the occasion was quite private. Since the Pope's death, the third person hasn't spoken up. Did these conversations end or were they confrontations? Many speculations spread due to the absence of answers. According to one account, the Pope experienced a sudden and terrible illness. Possible heart attack or stroke. Vatican officials postponed the news to go gracefully. Many questions arise from this hypothesis. Why delay? What needed cleaning, staging, or hiding? Before the public knew? Sabotage is an even worse theory. Some online communities speculate that Pope Francis was drugged, silenced, or isolated in his final hours. Anonymous revelations and Pope's farewell video, message body language analysis were mentioned by these communities. These people noted his slurred speech, hollow face, and manipulated video lighting. Eerie aspects include the sudden departure of his longtime personal physician, the Vatican Pharmacy's early April report of medicine shortages, and the papal aide's firing days before his death. Even Vatican experts recognize inconsistencies. Emilia Vanozzi, a senior Italian journalist who covered 3 popes, questioned the Vatican's death certificate, withholding in a statement. Every modern pope had a label, according to the Wasi writ.